A very good afternoon, Principal of VSIT, Dr. Rohini Kelkar ma'am, our honorable guest, Advocate Nadiya Sarguroh, our faculty members, and my dear friends. I, Adhira Kulara, chairperson of IEEE-VSIT Students Branch, would like to warmly welcome you all to Stree at the rate 2022. Break the Bias, a collaboration between IEEE, WIE, VSIT, and Women's Development Cell, WDC. On account of International Women's Day, we have organized today's discussion to empower and inspire women to live and build the life they want. Let's begin this event with the blessing of Goddess Saraswati. Thank you. Now, I kindly request Dr. Sarika Chauhan ma'am, branch mentor of IEEE VSIT Students Branch, to say a few words.
Good afternoon, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
So I, Dr. Sarika Chauhan, Chief Academic Officer at VSIT, would like to welcome everyone to our event Stree 2020 Break the Bias, which is a collaboration of WIE, IEEE VSIT and Women's Development Cell of VSIT, and is inner space and life and to celebrate womanhood. To begin Stree 2022 is centered on the idea of breaking the bias, and we can all break the bias together on International Women's Day and beyond. The world will be a better place in terms of making more informed, valuable decisions and recognizing the greatest talent. So we are thrilled to inform you all that this year we have prepared an event to celebrate International Women's Day, during which we will be discussing a multitude of topics. So today we will be discussing women's rights, and we have with us Advocate Nadiya Sarguroh, who will speak on the topic of a yoga session scheduled for tomorrow, where we will conduct various exercises and learn how to achieve inner and improve our health. On March 9th, we will conduct a self-defense training where we will learn various strategies to protect ourselves and learn how to be safe. Happiness, as the saying goes, begins with good health. So we will be conducting a health program. On March 11th, we plan to have a personality grooming session in which we will discuss during doing the right thing at the appropriate time in social settings. And finally, on March 12th, we will hold a panel discussion to conclude the celebration of International Women's Day. So I would like to acknowledge our dear principal, ma'am, Rohini Kelkar, for her tremendous support, due to which this event has been possible. So I thank you everyone for joining us today. And now I would like to call our dear principal to say a few words and to address the audience. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sarika. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, ma'am.
So hello and welcome to a week's long activity to celebrate the Women's Day. Today is our first activity, and I welcome our chief guest for the day, Advocate Nadiya. Hello, madam. Welcome to VSIT. We would have been very happy if we would have had this program offline on our beautiful campus. But due to the current circumstances, we are meeting online. So I welcome you once again, madam.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Break the bias being the theme of this year's Women's Day. We all are working, irrespective of whether it's a Women's Day or not, but we all are working towards breaking the bias at various places, at our workplace, at our home, in our community, and more importantly, in the colleges and schools, where these young minds are nurtured. So we at VSIT always try to imbibe all these universal values amongst our students. So nobody should involve themselves in such kind of activities, and nobody should accept any such type of injustice. So we would like to make all our students empower towards understanding the true values of humankind. From that, with this objective in mind, the WDC, the Women Development Cell of VSIT, along with IEEE VSIT branch and Women in Engineering section of IEEE, together all of us have planned these various activities for our students, for all our stakeholders, not just students, but students, teachers, and our non-teaching staff. So I hope all of them will wholeheartedly participate in all these activities for the entire week. We were fortunate to have very esteemed guests who are going to enlighten us on various gender-related issues. We are also going to have the sessions, as Dr. Sarika said, on yoga as well as for self-defense, which is going to make us physically as well as mentally strong to meet the new challenges of the world. And I would rather, since we are celebrating a Women's Day, but in general, everybody of us now needs to have, peace of mind, more peace of mind, more ways in which, we can keep ourselves cool as well as keep performing well and enjoy overall life. And therefore, from that point of view, this is our small effort towards that. And I hope all our students, teachers, and non-teaching staff gets benefit of all the activities which are planned for them. So with this word, I thank the organizers, I thank the student organizers, teachers in charges, and of course, all our chief guests who have accepted our invitation. And I request to take the program forward.
Now I would request Maitri to take forward the event.
Yeah, I think you have to be, you are on mute.
Yes, Maitri, you are audible.
Hello.
Yeah.
Ma'am, am I audible? Yeah. Nadia, ma'am, we would like to welcome you.
Yeah, now you're audible.
By giving you a sapling.
Our topic for today is women rights, where we will be talking about constitutional and statutory rights of women in India. And we have with us Advocate Nadiya Sarguroh to discuss this topic. Ms. Nadiya Sarguroh has joined MZM Legal as an associate in 2017 and has been actively working with MZM on a variety of complex dispute resolution and corporate litigation cases since then. Her extensive educational background has always given her an advantage over her peers. This is also evidenced by the fact that she was promoted to senior associate at MZM Legal within 18 months of joining. She has added tremendous value to MZM Legal's media and entertainment practice with her experience and innovative approach to handling complex matters. She also has extensive experience working on corporate transactions and legislation. With a keen interest in the practice areas of media and entertainment, dispute resolution, and corporate litigation, she has a master's degree in intellectual property rights and a postgraduate diploma in alternative dispute resolution from the University of Mumbai. Thank you.
Over to you, ma'am.
Uh, Good afternoon, one and all. Thank you for the generous and kind words of appreciation. I thank the principal for allowing me to be the first chief in educating the young, talented women and girls of your School of Technology. And I thank the Women Development Cell to come up with such a creative idea and term the event as Stree, because that is what it's all about. It's about who we are. The word Stree, the word woman, should define the power that it carries for each girl who aspires to fulfill her dreams, to achieve her dreams. And she should know that she's no different than any other boy in her house, and that she can do what any other child can do, irrespective of what the world feels about her. And I think the event ahead also takes this motive forward. So it's a beautiful event. Thank you for calling me. I'm very honored in having this opportunity to educate you all in terms of maybe what you already know, but I'll give you an insight of how we need to carry ourselves, and always know that no injustice can be done to us if we are aware of at least what is granted to us. What is not granted, that's a fight that is still ongoing and will be ongoing until we achieve it. But at least what is granted to us, that rights and those remedies should be exercised by us with full knowledge, because knowledge in the end is the power that you have. If you are ignorant, you will never be aware of how empowered you are and how fully you can exercise where and when and at what time things need to be done. So, without further ado, I will directly come to the topic of law and rights of women, because as we see that it's a daily battle that vigilant women of India today are fighting for the entire nation and the citizens who form the women population. Now, this is a fight that is going on since the independence period, where great freedom fighters such as Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Savitribai Phule, who started the movement of educating women, and she started the fight all alone by teaching girls in her own house, being an educated woman, because again, knowledge, as I say, is the best tool that anybody can have to be empowered. And that is why we need to know that when the drafters of the constitution wrote the constitution, they had a full 360-degree virtue in their mind, that women, being physically to a certain extent seen as weak, seen as the weaker section of the society, would definitely be disadvantaged, or there would be things that would cause injustice to women. And featuring that in the year 1950, when the constitution was finally accepted by our parliament, there were certain articles that were instilled, which today basically form the fight for having gender equality. Had your constitution not had these rights mentioned, or not had these fundamental points mentioned, today our fight would have been much more difficult. So if you see in other countries where women are not given equal rights. Like you'll see, and this is without any bias to any particular religion, but I just want to mention that you will see that in Gulf, you will see that there are clearly set different rules for males and for females, and there are no established rights that are also granted, because it's a royal rule, it's a king's rule, and whatever the king demands, that is how things function over there. But the Indian constitution, at least on paper in book, made the provision to give special rights to women, to see that no injustice is caused. And you have your fundamental rights bestowed under Article 14 to 35 of the Constitution. This forms part 3 of your Constitution. Now remember that these fundamental rights that are there in the Constitution, each one of you should know these fundamental rights, irrespective of your gender. You need to know, as a citizen of India, what are the rights that are granted to you under part 3 of the Constitution. And these fundamental rights that you must have studied maybe in your school now, because all of you are engineering students, you adopt science after your 10th, and then civics and political science and all of that is not a subject that you might have been in constant touch with, and therefore you never get to know about these rights unless and until you know that something wrong has happened, and then you search for a lawyer, and then you go ahead and read books and apprise yourself of these laws. But what I would encourage each one today over here to do is, you will get your constitution available online. Spend some time and at least read your part 3, which is the fundamental rights given to a citizen, including you as a woman, which tells that these are your rights. This is what you have to exercise. This is what has been already given to you since the year 1950. Half of us are not even aware about that. So let us start with being aware of the equal rights that are already given to you. And from this, I will urge a few sections, I will urge a few articles which I feel are important for you to know right here, right now. And the rest, of course, as I tell, that you will gain knowledge only by seeking it. And if you seek knowledge, you will be the most powerful person, because you will lead yourself by rationalism. So Article 14, Article 15, and Article 16 of your Constitution, okay, completely bestow or talk about the rights to equality. Article 15 of the Constitution emphasizes that no person shall be discriminated on the basis of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. So when we hear the word sex, what does it instill? It instills gender equality. It instills that the bias that has been happening should be broken now. That a man and a woman at all platforms should be treated equally. And nobody should have the right to discriminate a woman from a man. And this has been given since the year 1950. Article 15 provides this as a fundamental right to you, that if any person is discriminating on the basis of sex, that if X can get a job as an Ola driver, why can't a female driver also drive Ola? And now if you see, there are female auto drivers, there are female Ola drivers, because you can't tell कि आप ड्राइवर नहीं बन सकते या आप ये जॉब में नहीं आ सकते because you are a female. So if any opportunity is denied to you on the basis of you being a woman or you being a female, you are protected under Article 15 of the Constitution. And how does this protection work? This protection works in the sense that you can approach the High Court and the Supreme Court for your right and for the enforcement of this right. So any fundamental right which has been violated can be enforced before these two courts, who have the power to look into any issue for violation of a fundamental right. And you need to know that each fundamental right as an enforcement provided to it. Whether it is a government authority, whether it is a private institution, whether it is any other person who has tried to discriminate a woman from a male in any area. The reason being that you also have other fundamental rights, such as practicing a trade and a profession of your choice. And if that fundamental right is also hurdled, then you have the right to go and enforce it. That is why I say that today, this fight of having women in all platforms, in all fields, in all areas of workplaces is doing wonders, because the Constitution made this reservation for us to empower us and to see that we are not discriminated against any person. And in fact, a male also cannot be discriminated against a male. So it's a very broad right, but we have to look at it from the gender bias issue, because here, if you see, many corporates until a few decades were not providing CEO positions, were not providing senior management positions to women. And that was something which urged the legislature, of course, to also revise the Companies Act in 2013, which now makes special reservation for females to be in senior management. So we'll come to that a little later, but this is something which is very related, and therefore discrimination of any kind is not acceptable by the Constitution. And if that is happening with you, you need to know that you are protected by the law, and that there is a right, and that there is an equivalent remedy which you can enforce. Similarly, Article 14 of the Constitution bestows the fundamental principle of equality, that tomorrow, if any right is discriminated, where do I have to go? I have to go to courts, I have to fight my battle, I have to do the struggle, but the courts also should treat me equally. And therefore, Article 14 states that there is equality before law. So a man and a woman would be treated equally before the law. A man and a man would also be treated equally before the law, and a woman would also be treated equally before the law. Therefore, equality is such an important concept. When we say that there should not be bias, what do we ask? We ask for equality. We ask for an equal platform. We ask to be treated equally. And thus, the Constitution drafters, at the very beginning of drafting the Constitution, did a splendid job in reserving these rights, knowing that the weaker sections of the society, who we were treated as weaker, we are not weaker, but that's what was instilled in at that point in time, that justice should be given. And they reserved these rights for us to see that each person, each citizen of India, whether with any sex, caste, creed, religion, has to be treated on an equal platform. So 14 and 15, very, very, very important. Now, we all know that there are a lot of vices that are ongoing in developing countries, one of which, of course, is India. And during the British regime, and still going on in many rural areas, are vices such as, there is woman trafficking, there is human trafficking that happens, there is bonded labor, which also used to happen. There was the practice of sati, practice of dowry, many, many vices in which women were wrapped, and in which women were treated as, again, the weaker section, the the oppressed section of the society, where male chauvinists have taken all the advantage that they could in terms of making these ill practices and malpractices so stagnant that a female used to eventually die her own death with all that burden. And the reason for that was because males treated them as supreme and treated females as the oppressed class. And therefore, the Constitution drafters at that point in time also instilled a few more sections for protection. So, at one space, there's this debate that if you're equal, why should you need protection? At the other space, we have to say that you have oppressed us so much and put us 100 years back that these protective rights will now help us to come back at the same platform. So you can't have the cake and eat it too, So there are certain males who will have this debate that if you're treating yourself equally, all these protective rights should be taken away. But then what about the years of oppression that you've already done? How to curb these practices that are already there if you don't give us these protective rights? And these protective rights are nothing in addition to favoring me, it is only protecting us and getting us to that platform. So at any time, if you are faced with this question, where people say when you're asking for gender equality, why do you need reservation? Then let it be an open platform and let males and females have equal amount of reservation, or males and females have equal amount of rights and laws. There should be no protective rights. That's the question I'm faced with many times when I speak about breaking the bias and the gender equality, where males have this argument that if you're treating yourself equally, then why do you need this protective rights? It's only because you males have actually dominated women and oppressed women for so long and continue to do so. It is us to get us to that platform. Let there be no vices prevailing. Clean the country and then give us an equal platform, and we'll show you that we don't require all of this in the first place. But because the country is in such a state today that these protective rights are absolutely essential to see that this bias is broken, and it's only to break this bias that these protective rights are given to us. So that's an answer that you can give to whoever comes up with this question to you at any point of debate that you are going to get in with in the longer run. Now, coming to the constitutional rights, so Article 16 basically talks about how the gender discrimination matters in employment. Okay, so 16 deals about gender discrimination matters in employment. So 14, 15, and 16 basically go hand in hand. 14 tells that if you have any right which is abridged, you can go before the law and the law will treat you equally. 15 says that in no matters can any person be discriminated on various issues, including sex, so a man and a woman have to be treated equally. 16 says that in terms of employment also, the privileges, the opportunities, the payment should be equal work for equal pay, and therefore no person should be discriminated in terms of employment. So if a woman is working for 8 hours and if a male is working for 8 hours, both of them have to have an equal pay. And today, if you see that many corporates are standardizing this, that whether it's a male professor or a female professor, the position is the same, the payment has to be same. There has to be standardization, and there cannot be bias in terms of payment scales or in terms of working hours, and these working hours have to be habitable working hours. In fact, there's a step ahead that the constitution goes, and there are certain directive principles also, which have led to making new laws for women in terms of having habitable work conditions, in granting certain maternity benefits, okay, and leaves for maternity. Now, on the basis of gender equality, people are coming up with paternity leaves also, which is absolutely fine, because when we speak about breaking the bias, we should also see that if women are getting maternity leave to take care of the wife, the spouse also needs certain leaves, and therefore many corporates are now going ahead and also giving paternity leaves, so that the husband and the wife and the child, all of them can spend time together, and both the wife and the child can be taken care of adequately. So 16 provides again a right to you in terms of employment, in terms of equal hours for equal pay, and in terms of seeing that any position granted to a male can also be granted to a female, and that is very, very, very important. Now we come to a highlight on certain protective rights, which basically deal with various legislations that have come into place that focus on protecting women. And why does it focus on protecting women? Because there was no protection against these vices given at all. So in 1950, we resolved that there should be no traffic in human beings, okay? There should be no bonded labor, that there should be no dowry, that there should be no rape, that there should be no sexual harassment. but there were no laws which came into picture. And if you see from 23 to 26 of the constitution, it speaks about how human trafficking and bonded labor and etc., all these things should not be done. Now if you see the stats, human trafficking is mostly young girls and is mostly women, okay, who want to migrate from one state to another, or maybe from one country to another, were taken advantage of. And then there's a separate process which is very very ugly, which happens to these girls and to the women. And therefore we have the Indian Penal Code, which basically deals with all these offenses that are carried, and there are heavy punishments. There is criminal imprisonment, and of course there may be fine in certain cases. So you are also protected in terms of your bodily rights, bodily harm, bodily injury that is caused to you. And something which goes as a deterrence with the constitution is your Indian Penal Code, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware about, which basically deals with specific offenses against women, and it basically criminalizes it. In fact, today there is a debate on whether marital rape has to be also dealt with the same way a normal rape a victim is dealt with, and whether the punishment also has to be the same for the offender who has committed rape. So that is still ongoing, and that's a process, as I tell you, that we will gradually evolve and we will gradually reach to a position where the bias is completely broken. And we should all be updated with what happens in terms of uh, such laws that are being made for women, because only when you know will you exercise a remedy if your right is abridged. So the constitution then in the directive principles also leads to show that women and children have to be given dignity. Women and children's identity at all times has to be at par. And in fact, under Article 39D, the Constitution, as I said, resolves to see that women are not taken advantage of in terms of their employment. Under Article 42, the Constitution also directs states to ensure that there is maternity relief. And the Constitution becomes the Bible of enactment of laws. So we need to understand that if any act or any legislative statute, okay, which is passed by the government, the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha together, then in that sense, any act which is not in line with the Constitution is deemed as illegal by the courts, and that can be challenged. Therefore, the Constitution and the rights bestowed in the Constitution, or the articles mentioned in the Constitution, are the Bible to each act that comes forthwith and which is enacted and which is brought into the legislature. So let us look at a few acts that deal with protective rights, and then we'll do a few acts that also deal with empowerment of women. So the first act, of course, was the abolition of Sati. And if you see today, at least in majority parts of India, of course, we don't know in extreme rural areas, still maybe these vices exist. But if it is known that such a practice has happened, again, you go back to your Indian Penal Code and you can report this as a cognizable offense and action can be taken. But Sati is completely abolished now. Since the pre-independence period, a movement was there for abolition of Sati, and today we see that at least in most parts of India, there is in most parts of India, there is no practice of Sati ongoing. Then you have the most prevalent customary vice that is there, which is your dowry. So even though there is an act for dowry prohibition, we still see that females have to, or the house of the girl has to bring gifts, and there are demands, and the groom, being the male, is treated as a supreme character, and therefore the demand for dowry was very, very prevalent. And therefore in the year 1961, the governments came up, the state government and the central government together came up with the Dowry Prohibition Act, and this has prohibited the demand of any kind of dowry in India. In fact, if you are found demanding dowry, or if you're caught demanding dowry, or if you're reported taking dowry, you may have an imprisonment up to a term of 6 months, and there are certain fines that you have to pay. And this 6 months could be dealt with in terms of uh, extreme cases where it also goes up to 2 years. So if there is a demand for dowry, the girl's house which is ruined because of such a thing, so to get parity, that the girl and the guy both don't have to give each other anything when they are marrying, or the families don't have to give each other anything when they are marrying, this Dowry Prohibition Act came into place. And if there is any demand for dowry, or if there is harassment due to the demand for dowry or non-payment of dowry, the entire family, you can take an action against the entire family, including the son, the mother, the father, the in-laws, whoever is there, who are colluding to sort of harass you until that payment of dowry is made. And in fact, this is something that we need to also enlighten and tell our housemaids, because in today's generation, maybe we will not see this, but if you see in the poor houses that are there, there is still a lot of the dowry system which is ongoing. Even though if there is a deterrent act, people are still continuing to do these offenses and oppressing women. And therefore there is protection in terms of stating that there can't be any bias, that because you're a bride you have to pay dowry, and because you're a groom, you will be entitled to receive dowry and oppress the girl and the house of the girl. And therefore this breaks the bias in terms of marriage, where both are treated equally, that there should be no demand for dowry, that there should be no demand for money being paid, except of course whatever are the general costs that are there for getting married. So this is the right that you have, that you also should know that you can file a criminal complaint against the entire family for this, and get everybody behind bars up to a period of 2 years. So this is a significant revolution that happened, and at least certain deterrence is there between the demand for dowry, because if that is reported, then you might be in serious trouble. So at least, if not through rationalization, the legislature is trying to work ways to empower women to see that they are at an equal footing by giving this protection and giving the deterrence to the families to refrain from making such demands. So this is something that you should know, and I'm sure everybody is aware of it, but this is how you need to proceed, that if there is any such demand, you can file a criminal complaint. That has to be a cognizable offense. And in terms of any bodily injury, you will have other provisions of the IPC which will protect you in terms of recording grievous hurt and filing a first information report, which would then take its own course of action under section 154 of the CRPC. So these are a few things that you need to be well read about, because if you know there is a right, you should also know where you have to go and exercise it, and how you have to go and exercise it, and what are the repercussions of exercising such a right, and what are the remedies available to you. So one thing that is there, that there is should be no demand for dowry. Now another thing is, of course, and this is something which is so rampant behind closed doors, where a husband and a wife live together. Okay, there is domestic violence is something which is a vice, which is not only there in India, it is prevalent all across the globe, whether it is a developed country, whether it is a developing country, every other nation today, if you see the stats, and I don't know if you've read about the stats in the COVID period where husband and wife have lived together for about a period of 2 years in the same house because of the virtual world, the cases of domestic violence against women have only risen all across the globe, including India. And this is something that the governments, and especially the government of India, has taken very, very seriously. And therefore, there was a special act which is reinforced for women, which is called as the Protection of Domestic Violence Act 2005. It was passed in the year 2005 on 13th of September. Now, this was to guarantee the victims of domestic violence to come out and speak up, and action would be taken for that domestic violence. Again, whether it is only the husband or the in-laws, you have a right to report domestic violence, whether it is behind closed doors or it is in public. You should not suffer from a marriage which is toxic. You should not suffer from a shared household which becomes impossible to stay in. And in such a case, there is a full protection given to you. This is on the UN model legislation for domestic violence, and it's basically imposing a moral responsibility on any member of the community who's aware of domestic violence happening in a household to go and report that. But of course, the female who is undergoing such domestic violence will have to ratify the report, because if you don't, as a woman, speak up for your own case, there is no case which is registered. And therefore, even if somebody reports a domestic violence case, the female against whom domestic violence is happening will have to accept that, there is domestic violence. And then you should see that how the act basically is so powerful, that if you are living in a household, if you have left your family, if you have been sharing the household with the husband, you have equal rights to utilize that household. And that's all what empowerment is about, that there should be no bias and there should be no violence against you for any reason whatsoever, whether it is clubbed with a dowry demand or whether it is just any random frustration or displacement which is happening time and again. You have a full right to exercise this. And again, with the provisions of this act, when a complaint is filed, the provisions of the IPC would take its own recourse, and there is again criminal imprisonment of any member who is going ahead and exercising such illegal acts against a woman. So this is something that is very, very, very important for us to know as females, that we have a right to a shared household, we have a right to live peacefully, we have a fundamental right to life and liberty under Article 21 of the Constitution, and no person can take that away from us, because we have to be treated equally. So another very, very important right under Article 21 of the Constitution is right to life and liberty. If a male has a right to life and liberty, a woman also has a right to life and liberty. She has the right to dress the way she wants. She has the right to do things she wants. She has the right to exercise. She has the right to drink alcohol. She has the right to smoke a cigarette. She has the right to go to pubs. She has the right to educate herself. And nobody can put a vice that it's only okay for. Of course, I'm not encouraging anybody to do toxic activities, but this is something that is a debate that happens, that when a guy is seen doing certain acts which may be on a cultural perspective be looked upon as inappropriate, but when you are at a certain age, you have the same rights. You have the right to dress as you want. You have the right to go wherever at whatever time, and there should be no restrictions in terms of how a girl or a boy lives his or her life. And that is something that we as future parents, or we as teachers or we as members of the society need to inculcate in every girl, and in fact every boy also, because it's very very important, more than girls, for boys to know that these are the rights given to women, and that you cannot in any case infringe upon my rights, because I have equal rights as you have. And therefore this session that we are doing, this is a session, if recorded, should be circulated out, and everybody should know that a Stree is a powerful word, and that we are protected because we should be given that equal platform. So Article 21, very, very important. You should read about it. There are many case laws that support what women should do and what, and it's nobody's business to say that, you can't wear A particular type of dressing or B particular type of dressing. So that's very important for us. And coming to workplace. So there are so many cases that we are aware about where indecent activities, inappropriate activities have happened with females, these activities were in fact completely dissuaded by the Supreme Court in a judgment that was given in the year 1993 in the state of Vishaka, basically, where a young girl was raped by police officials, in fact, for that matter, where she was reporting an illegal act that happened with her in terms of a gram panchayat, and while reporting, she was actually raped by police officers, and this is a very very path-breaking case, which led to finally, after 20 years, bringing in an act called as Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act 2013. Now, this is an act that came, and very, very, very required act. The reason being that while granting jobs, also favors were asked, as if women are objects and you can utilize them. Objectifying women was such a normal stereotype, such a normal gender option for males, and to curb this particular vice that is happening in fact in the educated society, where corporates, where commercials, where you must have heard about so much about casting couches, and sexual favors to get promotion, sexual favors to get jobs, sexual favors to retain jobs. So in order to curb such sexual harassment at workplace, this act was finally enforced in the year 2013, and now every organization having employees more than 10 should have an internal complaints committee, which will look upon any act that has happened in terms of sexual harassment of women at workplace. And the word sexual harassment is very, very broad, touching inappropriately, speaking inappropriately, showing pictures which are inappropriate, asking for sexual favors relating to work at the employment space, so on and so forth. It's a very small act. All of you should read this act, because your education institution also today is basically a workplace, and in fact the word women, or the applicability of this act, is basically for every female which enters the organization. So it's not only people working there, it's also a person or a client or a customer or a student who has entered your organization will be captured under this act. So if it's a student with whom XYZ things have happened, if it's a client, if it's a chief guest, if it's anybody who's visiting your organization, any female who is a victim of sexual harassment at your workplace will have the right to enforce her rights under this act. And therefore, the internal complaints committee is also empowered and powered by maximum female members. The chairperson is also a senior lady of the institution itself. So it's a 5-member committee, out of which 50% have to be females. The chairperson has to be a female, and the decision is then granted basis the evidence, basis the complaint. Full protection is given to the woman. The woman can ask for leave, stay at home. She will be protected. If the accused is in the same campus, same premises, he will be moved to another campus. He will be suspended until the investigation is on, so on and so forth. And it's such a beautiful act, because there have been so many cases which are ugly, which are gross, which are ghastly, and this act really empowers women in the senior most positions at these organizations to take charge of such incidences and to protect the rights of women in the corporate space. So sexual harassment of women at workplace, much needed act which came in 2013, and today every organization has to have an internal complaints committee. In fact, if you don't have an internal complaints committee, this will then be reported to a local zonal officer, who will then take charge and call in the organization to see why there is no internal complaints committee, and then there'll be investigation on the organization. So every organization, every branch of an organization who is having 10 or more employees. So for example, if your headquarters is at, say, Worli, having 100 employees, but you have branches all over Bombay, all over India, more than 10 employees, every branch will have to have its own internal complaints committee. So therefore, it's not that it's only one headquarter which has to have it. If you're working in branches, then that branch also has to have an ICC, and then subsequently the action is taken where a report is prepared. After the report, recommendations are given by the ICC. Then there is termination, there is fine. If the ICC feels that the offense is too much, they can also go to the police and lodge a complaint against the accused through the management of the organization. So the report, which is prepared by the ICC, led by senior most female member, has to be given to the organization. The organization will take it, see the recommendations, act on the recommendations, including filing an FIR if the offense is of a very serious nature. So therefore, this is a very important act that you should know. It's a small act. You should actually read about it, and you should see how women are empowered to firstly. So now, what does this act also do? This act also mandates to put women in senior most positions, because if you have to form an ICC and you don't have a senior most woman in that position, you will have to hire people and then form your ICC. So it not only empowers protecting females, it also empowers getting females in senior most positions and seeing that you have adequate number of female employees, because you have to have this mandatory committee set up. And this committee would also have a person working from the NGO, which will be an independent member who has to be associated with your ICC, who has worked for the cause of women, who has worked in terms of social affinity, and who has served this country on such issues for a period of 10 years. Whether it's a lawyer, whether it's a member of the NGO, whether it's a ex-political member who has worked for empowerment of women. And therefore, you see how this act works in a dual way. It gets female on senior most positions, because if it's a male dominated ICC, again, there is a probability that there will be gender bias, and that the decisions won't come out fairly, and therefore the government mandates that it has to be led by a senior most female employee, and that maximum number of members have to be females. So the POSH works in two ways. One, it empowers women to decide. The other, it empowers women to be at senior most position, and it also protects every female visiting, working as an apprentice, contractor, permanent positions, clients, students, whoever visits an organization, to be protected at all times. So this is a very, very path-breaking act which has come. And of course, there are again debates that it only protects women, but as I told you that we have been oppressed for hundreds of years, and to get back to that position, we will have to have certain protective rights in our favor. So another important act that I would like to deal with, and then of course in the next 15 minutes, probably you can open the floor for questions, Sarika, because I don't want to bore everybody with a lot, but these are a few things that come to my mind in terms of empowering women. Now, the Companies Act, as I told you, also mandates having women independent directors. So for so long, if you see, many companies didn't have directors on the board at all, and didn't have women directors on the board at all. And vigilant women of India today have fought for their rights on the board, and that they should be there on the board, and therefore it mandates that at least one woman director has to be there on the board. And this is there in the Rule 3 of the Companies Act for Appointment and Qualification of Directors, Rules 2014, which says that your board has to have at least one woman director. So if a board comprises of 3 directors, there has to be minimum one. Maximum could be any. The full board could be women directors, but this is mandated. And if you're not compliant with this, then the fine can go up to the paid up capital of the company, and the ROC, which is the registrar of the company, is under the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, can take suitable action against such a board which does not have women representation on it. You will also be aware that under the Hindu Succession Act today, a female earlier in HUF did not have any co-parcenary rights, and it was only the male son. But now the courts have resolved that daughters also have equal co-parcenary rights in succession, and therefore in such succession, especially with the Hindu Succession Act, daughters are now brought on an equilibrium, on an equal platform, are empowered to have the same rights in succession as a male, and they are also given the co-parcenary rights. So these are a few rights that come to my mind in terms of protection, in terms of empowerment, especially at your workplace, because you all are aspiring students, and you will be aspiring career professionals. You will be at different positions. You will be at various corporates or doing your independent jobs or trades and professions. And all I want to say is that be vigilant, don't take any injustice from anybody, and exercise your rights, because you have a lot of rights that empower you today. And of course, there is a fight that is still going on. In fact, last year on Women's International Women's Day, in the parliament, there was a demand for again 33% reservation in the parliament in the seats for women. Now that is a ongoing debate, that reservation has to be there, because at the political front, the more the women are empowered, the more they can do for the female citizens of India. And that fight is still on, and there are various other levels at which we are fighting for equality, and we will keep fighting until we break the bias. So thank you very much. I hope this has at least enlightened you with your basic rights, to seeing how we can move forward with what we have and fight for what we don't. So if anybody has any questions in terms of mechanisms, in terms of complaints, in terms of how towards your rights.
Yes. So I think over to you, Maitri. We have a couple of questions from the audience. So we can just, Maitri, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So, ma'am, one of the questions you talked about Article 16 about women and workplace and everything. So, how can we work towards reducing this undeniable wage gap for women that we have?
So, see, there are two aspects to this. The wage gap, yes, it's a fight that is still ongoing. And, we have to exercise the rights in terms of reporting that this bias is going on in whatever organization we are basically in. So, if you face it at an X organization, if you don't voice out, you will never break the bias. So, that's the first thing, that you have to voice out. There are mechanisms, you have the courts, you have to file complaints, you have to take it to a proper recourse. Just by not taking up the job or leaving the job and changing the job is not going to help break the bias. So to break the bias, females have struggled, unfortunately, and will continue to struggle, but at least you know that you have a right which protects you, which gives you equal pay. There are industrial disputes tribunals that are there, in which you can, if a company is, say, a hotel industry, you can go and file an appropriate wage demand in terms of what is being paid to a X person in the same company being of a different gender. So there's an appropriate mechanism that we have to take, and the legal recourse is the best recourse. At least you have a right, and if it's abridged, you have a remedy. So wage gap can be taken care by reporting and filing adequate uh, uh, actions, legal actions.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We have a few questions in the chat.
Yeah, please,
What
please, you
are
can.
some important helpline numbers for women?
Now, there are a lot of helpline numbers. What I will do is I will share a few with Sarika, all right? And because I don't remember them by heart, so and by mind, but I will share a few links for helpline numbers in terms of your National Commission for Women.
That will be, yeah, that will be perfect. Yeah.
So I'll share that with Sarika, definitely. And
Yes, that will be perfect, Nadia.
she can circulate it to all of you.
Yes.
Interesting question.
Of course. And how do we encourage women in navigating career along with motherhood?
That's a struggle that all of us are facing today. So there are two things. See, as I told you, that there's a Maternity Benefit Act which is there, right? So that gives you 26 weeks as leave. Okay. And then males can also get paternity benefits. So after 26 weeks, you leave the child with the husband and go to work because he'll be on paternity leave. So the point is this, that of course, motherhood is a planned action, and you of course need to have a supportive household, and the state is giving you paid leave for 26 weeks up to two children. After that, you only get 8 weeks of leave. So they are also seeing that there is population control, and up to two, you will have 26 weeks of leave, which is good enough to at least start with the initial few, and then you have to plan your motherhood accordingly in terms of putting a caretaker, or if there's no caretaker, then the husband and wife have to share the household responsibilities.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah,
You talked about divided.
right.
How does someone know about it if they are facing both in or don't know about the laws? So how do we
Right.
teach them, or how do we explain them that if you are going through it, don't complain about it or like stress over it that it's a bad thing and become toxic. So how do we teach them, or how do we know about the laws?
So, firstly, I'll tell you one thing, that I could only give you a gist of it, but it's a very small act again. And in that, I think you should read that small act and understand things which are very, very apparent in terms of physical cruelty, mental cruelty. Physical cruelty is if your husband or your in-laws are coming and hitting you time and again, are coming in, in terms of mental cruelty, are demeaning you, abusing you, keeping you in a space where you don't have your freedom at all. So these are a few things which lead to violence in the house. And again, this can only be curbed by reporting it and by fully standing on it and supporting it in a way where you are completely sure that you don't want to exist in that household anymore. And any woman for that matter should not take any form of violence. In terms of Ek Thappad To Hai, I think there's a movie also which, who was that girl? I don't remember the movie's name. Which movie was it? Tapsi, haan. So you should see that movie. That is completely on these laws. You should also see A Thursday, which is right now Yami Gautam, which deals about rape victims. So Indian movies are actually growing to a certain extent where they revolve around laws for women. And these are a few movies that I would encourage you to see, and you as educated people to help those who are not very blessed in reading books or are not very blessed in having the opportunity to educate themselves. Like starting from your home, charity begins from your home. Teach these few things to your maids and see that you support them in terms of whatever they require.
And like continuing the question, you said
Yeah,
if a woman or a girl doesn't want to stay in that house, particular house,
right,
then
right,
they can go out. But there are a lot of people who don't have anyone rather than them.
right.
They don't have any support.
Right. So then you move to the court for maintaining yourself
So, ma'am, like,
through the husband's family.
yeah,
And you file an application for maintenance till the time the case is ongoing. And that maintenance will be granted to you under the Domestic Violence Act. So there are measures where it can so happen that the court may say, if it is so extreme and grave, that the court may say that the husband has to make an alternate accommodation for you to stay because she can't stay in the same household, or you have to move out until the matter is decided.
okay.
So those are certain interim reliefs that can be filed before the appropriate court. For domestic violence, it is your metropolitan magistrate court in the jurisdiction where the complaint from the local police station will be taken, and that court will be the deciding court.
Ma'am, are there any institutions, anything that helps
Yeah,
women?
so the National Commission for Women that is there, basically you can go and file a complaint there and then pursue your complaint from through them with the police, because there are various NGOs who work for women in India. And maybe in a week's time I'll circulate a few names to Sarika, who basically deal with complete protection of females in terms of any atrocities happening against them. So
Thank you so much.
you can go and resolve those issues through them as well if you know that you don't have any other support or you can't fight this battle on your own.
Thank you, ma'am.
No problem.
Any other questions from the audiences or the participants? If any, you can unmute yourself and ask. I think you have answered all the questions. So over to you, Asha. I think my turn, right?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for answering all of our questions. We really appreciate it. Now, I would like to request Asha ma'am to come and felicitate our honorable guest, Advocate Nadiya Sarguroh.
Yeah, I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So, good evening, everyone. On behalf of WI, IEEE, and WDC, all the faculty members, branch members, and VSIT, I would like to felicitate Advocate Nadiya Sarguroh for the wonderful oration you delivered.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, ma'am, for sharing your immense knowledge on the Constitution provisions and Domestic Violence Act, Maternity Benefit Act, and also the prevention of sexual harassment in the workplace. Thank you so much for sharing your immense knowledge on all the topics. It was an honor to hear you talk, and I feel truly lucky that we got to attend it today. And also, I would like to present a small e-memento. So please accept this happening as a token of love and appreciation for giving your valuable time and to be a part of our Women's Day celebration. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Before we conclude the session, I request all the participants to fill up the feedback form for the session. I'm just quickly posting the link on the chat box. Yeah. I'm not able to see chat box. Yeah. So all the participants are requested just to just give me a second to just click on the feedback link, and you all are requested to fill the feedback form. It will really will help us to organize the event. And also we will be having the group photo. Okay. So again, I would like to heartily thank you everyone for your active participation. We hope to see you all tomorrow for the next session, that is Stree 2020 tomorrow. That is on the theme Break the Bias, where we'll be discussing on the yoga and wellness. Goodbye and stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now
And
I request everyone to switch on the cameras so that we'll have a group photo to have.
I wish all of you a very happy event, and all the luck, love, and success to all the females attending this session here and forever.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Thanks from all of us. Now I will request all the participants to switch on the camera so that we can have a group photo with the ma'am. Yes, participants, please switch on your camera.
I request everyone to switch on the camera. It's not only the women or the girls. So all the participants can switch on the cameras. It's gender equality. So we can see others are also there. Ankush. We have our faculty members as well. So we request Sudesh, the people also to switch on their cameras. Tejas, Lakshmikant sir.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you so much.
So it's
See
done.
you tomorrow. Yeah.
So thank you, Nadia. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. And we really got to know a lot of information, which we were not aware actually. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye.
So see you tomorrow for the yoga session that we have at 3 to 4:30, the same timing on the same link. And those who wanted to join us on the yoga, we have made the arrangement in Y-Block Seminar Hall, but we have a limited seats because of the COVID guidelines and all. So faculty members, those who would like to join us for the yoga session in the Y-Block Seminar Hall, please contact me for the same today so that we can make the proper arrangement. Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow.